America, the land of the free and the birthplace of mountain biking. Over 50 years ago, riders were herding their modified beach cruisers down the fire roads of Marin County in California, and in doing so, mountain biking was born. There's been a ton of iconic American-bred bikes, so as an ode to them, here's 5 iconic bikes from the US of A that have shaped modern mountain biking and you can still buy today. Where else can I start but with the legendary Specialized Stumpjumper? The original was released way back in 1981, and while the name is the same, the modern Stumpy is a very different bike. For starters, it's now full suspension and has bigger wheels, but it's still designed to be the benchmark all-rounder. While in modern times the industry is littered with different categories, the premise of the Stumpjumper is still the same. It's just a mountain bike through and through. And recently, the Stumpjumper entered its 15th generation. The all-new Stumpjumper 15 is a dramatic departure from the previous version. The side arm brace and the souped up, slacked out and hyper adjustable Evo models are confined to the history books, and there's now just one frame to cover all bases. The loss of the Evo saddened us at first, but dig deeper and there's little cause for concern. The new Stumpy gets the same level of adjustment as the old Evo and can be slackened to a wild 63 degrees in the head angle department. Bottom bracket and chainstay length can also be adjusted, so you can tailor the handling to your taste. Whereas the old bike was available in a 130mm rear wheel travel format with flex stays or the 150mm travel Horselink equipped Evo, the new bike gets 145mm of rear bounce matched to a 150mm travel fork. It kind of sits in the middle of the old bikes and uses Specialized fabled FSR system with that pivot point down on the chainstays. Controlling that travel is Specialized new proprietary Genie shock that has been co-developed with Fox. But don't worry, if you don't like it, you can swap in another shock if you want to. Technical editor-in-chief Rob Weaver has been shredding the new Stumpy since its launch, and if you want to get the full lowdown on the bike, check out his video with the pop-up banner up there or the link in the description below. The TLDR version is that the new bike rips and looks set to continue the Stumpjumper's long-held place as one of the best all-rounders you can buy and a truly iconic mountain bike for the masses. When it comes to mountain bike racing and iconic images, few brands and bikes can match Yeti and the ASR. Now, I am going to cheat here a little bit, as while the first official ASR was released in the year 2000, Yeti had the Arc AS as far back as 1992. Perhaps controversially, I'm grouping them together, as there's a clear lineage between the two in my mind, and the ASR name spread to numerous other bikes in later years, as I'll come on to later. The Arc AS started with just 1.5 inches of rear wheel travel before doubling to a whopping 3 inches of rear wheel bounce. Under the likes of Miles Rockwell, Missy Giove and Jimmy Deaton, the Arc AS won countless races and cemented Yeti's place as a brand born for racing. While the ASR disappeared for a few years, it's back in 2024 and is looking to start where it left off. It's still a race bike through and through, but like most cross-country bikes these days, it's gone through the longer and slacker treatment. Travel is bumped up to 150mm out back to go with a 120mm travel fork too. There's a full carbon frame in either Yeti's cheaper C grade for lower end complete bikes or the lighter Turk for higher end builds, and there's a frame only option too. The SR isn't cheap, but in my mind Yetis have always had that supercar mystique about them. Seeing them out on the trail is an event, as they are just so exotic and beautiful, and with them being undeniably pricey, you've got to have deep pockets to own one. That, combined with its racing pedigree and history, makes the ASR one of the most iconic American mountain bikes of all time. Apologies for yet more car references, but imagine for a second that Porsche suddenly decided the 911 shouldn't be a sports car, it should be an SUV. Well, that's kind of what Santa Cruz has done with the Heckler. Okay, that might be a stretch, but of all the bikes in the brand's illustrious history, the Heckler is arguably one of the most iconic. So you can imagine my surprise when it resurrected the name for an e-bike of all things back in 2020. For nearly 20 years from its inception in 1997 to its quiet and sad death in 2016, the Heckler had been the brand's easy to live with all-rounder. It had simple single pivot suspension, good old aluminium frames, and was built to tackle pretty much anything and everything. The new Heckler and later Heckler SL sticks with the latter points, but you can't say they're simple aluminium rigs anymore. But They are capable bikes, and given how many of them I've seen around my local trails in North Wales, they're ticking boxes for a lot of riders too. Going back to Porsche, and it's the same kind of thing as its Taycan electric car. They just seem to be everywhere you look these days. It's the right kind of machine for the times, oozes the right kind of appeal, and it wears the right badge. I get that same feeling with the Heckler. E-bikes are growing in popularity, and Santa Cruz has become arguably one of, if not the, most desirable of brands. So a Santa Cruz e-bike is naturally going to sell like hotcakes, despite their high price tags. If you pull the trigger on a Heckler, you get a choice of the full-fat EMD-B variant with its Shimano EP8 motor chucking out buckets of power and torque, or the lighter, more nimble SL with Fazawa's Ride 60. Either way, you get 150mm of rear-wheel travel and mullet wheel setups, though you can get the full-fat Heckler as a full 29er if you desire. You'll find better performing and better value bikes out there, but in my opinion, few can match the Heckler for sheer showroom appeal at the moment. You can't talk about American mountain bikes and not bring Trek into the conversation. The Wisconsin brand is one of the biggest manufacturers around, and its fuel line of full suspension mountain bikes is nearing nearly a quarter of a century old. While there have been regular fuels, fuel EXs and top fuels, for me it's the middle of that trifecta that stands out in the model's distinguished history. The Fuel EX was and remains Trek's all-round trail bike, much like the Stumpjumper is to Specialized. Like the Stumpy, the name has stuck around, but the bike has grown in size and travel since its inception way back in 2005. Back then it had just 100mm of travel and those tiny diddy 26-inch wheels and geometry that nowadays almost looks closer to a gravel bike. The latest bike is very different, with 50% more travel up front at 150mm and 140mm out back. The wheels are also the now ubiquitous 29-inch size, that you can run the bike as a mullet with a smaller 27.5-inch wheel if you prefer. You can even fit a coil shock if you're that way inclined. For me, the Fuel EX and Stumpjumper showcase just how much trail bikes have changed over the past 2 decades. Back then, they were effectively beefed up cross-country bikes compared to now, where they are much longer travel and are a million times more capable than the machines of yesteryear. What's great is if you still want a beefier short travel machine, both brands offer just that in the form of the Top Fuel and the Epic Evo. But if you want a true all-rounder that can cover most of the bases modern trails and riding styles can throw at you, then bikes like the Fuel EX have got you covered. Last but by no means least, we have the Cannondale Scalpel. Cannondale is another huge American brand, and when it comes to icons and innovations, they certainly have their fair share. The brand was one of the first to popularise aluminium frames in the 90s, and who can forget their head shock and lefty forks, both of which are actually still in use today. Which brings me to the brand's Scalpel. This razor-sharp cross-country racer is another bike with a production life dating back more than 20 years. Over the last couple of years, we've seen a lot of cross-country bikes move over to flex-stay rear suspension. The Scalpel, though, has long used this design, with even the original bike using them all those years ago. It's not just the use of flex-stays that predates modern trends, though. Electronic suspension is a relatively new innovation in the world of cross-country racing. Well, except it isn't, because once again, the original Scalpel had it too, with the brand's ELO, or electronic lockout head shock fork. Who says the bike industry just doesn't recycle old ideas? Shimano will be bringing back airlines next. The modern Scalpel is an incredibly capable bike, with longer travel at 120mm on both ends and of course, longer, lower and slacker geometry. Its head angle is actually slacker than Cannondale's downhill bikes from the early 2000s, which is just wild to see how far bike designs have come in the past 20 years or so. If you want to see more on the latest Scalpel, check out Tom Marvin's thoughts on it with the pop-out banner up there or the link down in the description. So there are 5 of what we think are some of the most iconic American mountain bikes that you can still buy today in some form, but what do you think? Let us know your thoughts in the comments, and if you want more iconic bike tech, then check this out.